Hello, I'm Yoram, and I'm here today on October 16th of 2012. Today we announced the Dell Partner Program with MorphLabs, and I'm going to tell everyone a little bit more about MorphLabs, the MCloud Helix, as well as the Dell Partner Program. So just a kind of quick high level of what we're going to be talking about today. So MorphLabs is a maker of software to deploy EC2-like clouds for enterprises and service providers. We do this on a 2U platform. So this is the C6220 from Dell, which you can see right here. So we have dual 8-core, as well as 64 gigs of RAM on the master node and compute node, so they're pretty new and powerful. All powered by SSDs. So what you're going to have is the smallest form factor for a complete cloud, best price performance, and also best power utilization. So we're looking at watts per VM, which is a new metric that we're trying to push out there, under 10 watts. We optimize around open source software, so we use OpenStack. Obviously, we were at the OpenStack conference. We don't use every single part of OpenStack. We use specific projects within OpenStack. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And we specifically use the Canonical distribution. Everything that comes on the MCloud Helix is fully supported by Canonical, as well as an incentive for the persistent storage. And finally, we leverage high volume channels. So we're working directly with Dell. You can buy an MCloud Helix directly from a Dell salesperson today, as well as from Media Temple, another one of our partners who are offering a hosted solution of the MCloud Helix. So a complete private cloud, 100% dedicated, and running OpenStack software. So when you think about converged infrastructure, what we're trying to disrupt is what you see right here. So this is normally a V-block style infrastructure. So I don't want to call out people too much, but this is what converged infrastructure currently looks like. So converged infrastructure is all of the software and all of the hardware necessary for an entire cloud. So you'll see this with Exalogic 2, or you'll see this with the V-block. And so there's a couple things that we think are really actually wrong with this architecture. So you have an extensive use of a very expensive SAN, which drives up your cost per VM to be really exorbitant. So the cost to acquire becomes extraordinarily high. You have very complex networks, which require a specialized skill set to manage the system. And then ultimately you have dense blades, which means that every time you want to scale it, becomes very difficult. You have to re-architect your solution, or you have to have very large chunks. So with that in mind, we designed the MCloud Helix, right? So this is a 2U form factor, all of the storage, all of the compute necessary for a complete cloud, and you can scale them on demand, just 2U building blocks that you can scale. So smallest form factor, best price performance, and best power utilization, available from Dell today for $75,000, entire thing, out the box to acquire. Features 80 vCPU, so it's quite a bit. It's all powered by SSD, so the boot times that we're getting are under 8 seconds per VM, so it's incredibly fast and ultimately makes your developers extremely agile. 3 terabytes of integrated ZFS storage, and all fully integrated. So when it arrives on premise, there's nothing for you to do. You plug it into your 10 gig switch, and you're up and running, everything's ready to go. And all of this in a 2 RU footprint at under 800 watts. So what are we looking at? There's 4 real components. You have a master node. So the master node handles all of our software. So it launches and controls the virtual machines. It defines and allocates the users. We do monitoring and healing, reporting and billing, doing the firewall rules. And this is always going to be feature ahead of OpenStack. So there's a lot that we've done that you don't get currently in OpenStack. All of our orchestration and UI is built ourselves, and I'll kind of talk about that in a second. We feature 2 compute nodes that you can scale as well. So as you add more of these 2U boxes, you just add more of these compute nodes and storage nodes, and you're automatically increasing the capacity of your solution. And we take care of all of that through configuration management, through technologies like Puppet. So what goes into the software side of things, which is what everyone's concerned about, right? So this is the Ubuntu distribution of OpenStack. We use 6 specific components. So compute, Nova, right? Network, Quantum, Identity, Glance, Nova Volumes, which is Cinder, Images, Glance, and then Scheduler, which is a component of Nova. So we take care to pre-integrate this with our compute nodes, which are running KVM, and our storage node, which is running Nexenta. So this is integrated ZFS. So when you create volumes in your software, you're automatically creating an index entity, and you actually don't see this. So it's obfuscated from you entirely. And this has SSD caching for the read and write optimized caching. So the data that you're not accessing as often is actually going to be tiered for you. And we take care of that all automatically. We leverage something called the Fog API. So Fog is actually a Ruby cloud library, so you can kind of think about it as an API of APIs. So what it allows us to do is have a single API which works for OpenStack, but also works for AWS and Rackspace, and allows us to maintain a uniform deployability for our customers and ultimately not have any kind of vendor lock-in. And we built our own dashboard, the MCloud dashboard, which has all the orchestration, graphing, the user and resource management, and all the network and security layers. And then wrapped around all of that is some of our core IP, which what we call is MCloud Optimum. So MCloud Optimum is 24/7 support, all of the hardware and software. We utilize Puppet, as well as Crowbar to stand up our systems, and Xenos to do the remote monitoring for everything. So this is baked into the solution. So when you plug this in, there really isn't anything you have to worry about. We make sure to remote monitor everything. So what's the difference between what we're deploying with our OpenStack and just core OpenStack? So we provide this fully supported MCloud OpenStack distribution. We have Puppet for the configuration management, as well as Crowbar. Sensu for monitoring, and Graphite for graphing. So this is actually at the VM level, and I'll show some screenshots of that in a second. And then we have Xenos for remote management and support. All of this is 24/7 supported above us. And then the dashboard that we have is built up top of the Fog API. You can still drive the API, the infrastructure completely from the API, and the UI that you have is a stateless UI, so it's immediately reflected. And then you can expand into other cloud infrastructure, including AWS, Rackspace, vSphere, Joint, CloudStack, etc. So ultimately, you're avoiding the vendor lock-in and giving yourself more flexibility in the long run. So how are Dell and MorphLabs specifically working together? So today, MorphLabs was announced as the first partner of the Platform Partner Program. So you can buy this MCloud Helix right here. So this 2U box directly from Dell. And we're partnering to actually deliver OpenStack solutions out to the market. We have a case study that's available today that you can actually find on the Dell website, where Media Temple, one of our co-customers, has actually talked about reducing their OpEx by 50%, which is pretty massive. This is obviously coming from the extremely dense footprint that we have from our infrastructure, but also from the utilization of the SSDs. So what are some of the target workloads that we look at? So enterprise dev and test, we do very well. HPC environments, so since we have such high IOPS with the SSDs, we're able to satisfy a lot of different workloads. And then web-based apps is something that we really focus on. That's kind of where our core IP has been. So anybody who has compliance requirements, we work with a lot of Fortune 500 and media companies, people who are rapidly launching websites and need infrastructure on demand, and then also scaling it down. And then we include a lot of the automation via Puppet, so a lot of the DevOps automation. And then what we also see in Asia, since we have a pretty large footprint over there, is mid-scale server consolidation. So being able to bring hundreds of racks down into a few racks based on these 2 RU footprint. So we have telco and data center deployments around the world. So CoreSite, Telex, Alchemy exists. So Broadband Towers is Global Crossing in Japan, Globe, which is a $15 billion telecom. StarHub in Singapore, so these are all pretty large service providers.
These are customers separate from the Dell partnership though, right?
Correct. Yeah. So Dell partnership just allowed.
Just started, so.
And then these are just some screenshots of the infrastructure. We're happy to demo afterwards at our booth anytime you guys want. So you can select images from the standardized library, set the VM sizes and instance count, so you can deploy multiple at a time and actually resize these virtual machines on the fly, and then also define the security layer. And then we have the virtual machine monitoring and usage layer up here too. You have direct access to the VM management tools, so you can use soft hard reboot, resize the virtual machines, get directly into the VNC console, do any kind of delete, see the logs. It's all a really clean interface. Take snapshots for the VMs and storage volume. Since this is all running on 10 gig, this is also done really quickly. And then some of these DevOps automation that we're talking about, you can actually make these gold images available for your users, right? So if there are certain images that you don't want available for your developers, then you don't have to make them publicly available at all. We utilize Quantum and components of it, and there is software-defined networking and firewall, so you can set all of these security rules. So different protocols are available directly from here as well. And then we do monitor and meter all of this usage, right? So by user, by project, and this is also going to be something that we're expanding as Silometer, a new project within OpenStack, ramps up for Folsom and Grizzly. So, what we're talking about is ultimately the evolution of converged infrastructure, right? So starting at a vBlock, and you have your PerFlex, and then you have FlexPod, and ultimately we're getting into a 2RU footprint with an MCloud Helix, which has all of the software and all of the hardware necessary for complete cloud, and compute and storage and everything complete. So, the way we shape up in the market, there are several kind of different competitors, and I'm happy to kind of talk to this in a little bit more detail at our booth. But you have the legacy converged infrastructure providers, which we talked about as well. In terms of the public cloud providers, if you're deploying this internally, it actually ends up being cheaper on a per month basis, considerably cheaper, probably 20 to 30%, even using reserve instances from Amazon and still being able to scale this on demand. If you roll your own with a VMware stack, you're going to spend quite a bit of time trying to do that, and also quite a bit of capital, because all these license costs obviously add up. And then some of the next-gen converged infrastructure like Nutanix, some of the stuff that you're seeing from Piston, we also stack up pretty favorably over there. Just really having a converged appliance where you can plug it in, immediately get up and running and go. So that's all I have today. Thank you very much for joining me. It was a pleasure to talk to you guys. We're right around the corner over here, and you can also talk to any of the Dell sales guys about the MCloud Helix.